You have to know the core business better than the management, actually better than anyone else within the organization, because you have deep insights into any processing activity. And you have to get into the mindset of the stakeholders. My name is Abdulhamitn. I'm a business lawyer and working as a head of data privacy at Trendyol for almost a year now. So to answer your question a bit more holistically, I have to share some basic thoughts with you. As a consultant, I've worked with a lot of DPOs and I've seen both very positive and very negative examples. And of course, also my role in the context of my role as a DPO in different companies, I also, there had the opportunity to learn from mistakes. And because of the independent role of the DPO, and also, due to that, many DPOs remain passive and limit themselves and also their role to their monitoring and advisory role. So as displayed, as mentioned also in the GDPR itself. But if you take, for instance, a classic 3-line of defense approach, many DPOs stay, unfortunately, in the 3rd line and also don't leave that role in their day-to-day business of designing products or services together with the 1st line or even in the 1st line. But I personally like a very positive, proactive approach. So this means, to give you an example, one of my team KPIs is also the number of own initiatives we started as a team, and also the number of interactions with the business teams. At the end of the day, the role of the DPO team is always to be with the business, to work together with the business and not against the business. So that's very important. And in terms of a privacy program, there's no one-fits-all approach, right? So you have to know the core business better than the management, actually better than anyone else within the organization, because you have deep insights into any processing activity. And you have to get into the mindset of the stakeholders, right? So you have to understand, what do they expect? What would I expect if I would be, I don't know, working in the marketing department? Do I expect a very theoretical approach? Or do I want to hear, this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do, or even more step further, like designing the communication template together with the marketing teams, right? And to understand the business objectives and also to set up the privacy program very strategically, you need to look and always change the perspective of how you think and how you approach the meetings or the program itself with the different stakeholders. So by understanding what the objectives are and how the company plans to achieve them, the DPO can design and should design a privacy strategy that enables a creative privacy solutions and aims to accompany the achievements of the business objectives in general. So here too, it depends on a wide variety of factors. So what is the risk nature of the process? Is sensitive data or data of minors being processed? With whom is this data being shared? And what is the awareness level in the organization and the team in general? And also, very importantly, what stage of growth is the organization in, right? If you're in the market entry phase and the primary goal is to grow with a business, the risk appetite and risk acceptance will be different than if you're a gatekeeper, so a very big organization, and you're trying to leverage your position as a large and established organization for proactive lobbying or with communication with the authorities. So it really depends on your market situation and where you stand with the organization in general. When I first got involved in data protection project as a consultant, I was very reserved, as many of my colleagues, because I had the impression, well, this is going to be a really boring project. It's all only data privacy. No one cares about data privacy. So fortunately, I had a very, very fantastic mentor who, one of his first sentences in the project was, Abdul, take the chance and take the maximum of knowledge out of this project with you. At the beginning, I was like, it's a data privacy project, so there's not much to gain. But after my first day on the project, I came home so exhausted that I slept immediately. I usually first read a book or watch something, but I was, falling asleep right away. And there was just so much information for me and insights. So the difference was that I didn't just want to give a presentation about data privacy and the basic GDPR presentation, right? Obligations and rights, etc. But I really wanted to know everything in the organization. At that time, though, I didn't really know what everything really means. And as a DPO, you are, of course, involved at all levels of the company and so many teams. So starting from the HR team with talents sourcing to offboarding, or going to the differences between performance marketing and online marketing, or all the countless applicable data privacy laws when you're writing the ban and deletion concept and the policy itself. So the range of my activities is so broad, you cannot even, you cannot put that into one sheet, right? So, and actually no 2 days are the same, and I can get my own and can set my own objectives and my own goals on a daily basis. And I don't think that many professional fields will allow you this kind of creativity and flexibility on a daily basis. So the biggest challenge is not the GDPR itself. It's a law, so it's very clearly described. The authorities publish guidelines. So it's quite easy to understand and quite easy to implement if you just see it from that perspective. But one of the most important critical tasks for me in any company is to determine the narrative. In 99% of all cases, data protection is seen as a necessary evil, and my task is to change the narrative through various techniques from actually psychology, so that data protection is seen as a matter of course and not as as an evil thing or something we have to do because we have to comply with the law, because that's not the case. So my approach changes from stakeholder to stakeholder. What it means is actually some of my stakeholders are emotionally approachable and accessible, so which means I can tell them the story and I can activate certain emotions in them. Other stakeholders, they are very fact and data driven. So this means they don't really care if I tell them, well, the customer expect that, but it's more, listen, this is a survey which we have conducted, this is the outcome, and we can see a clear correlation between that and that, right? So it really changes from stakeholder to stakeholder. So therefore, I analyze my stakeholders and know their character and their expectations pretty well before I'm going in any meeting with them. So to get this information, as a DPO, you have to really build a good network of people around you, who trust you and rely you, and where you can also rely and trust on them, right? Another big challenge is the image of the DPO or the DPO team in the organization in general. Often, and I've seen that in many, many companies, is that the teams perceive the privacy team as blockers, or always a team saying no and slowing down projects. And this is my personal nightmare. If this ever happens in my career, I'm going to stop working for privacy, because this means I lost kind of the motivation in it. So that's why I put a lot of emphasis on interdisciplinary teams. So what it means is my team is not, and was never will be, just made of exclusively lawyers, but the colleagues are, the talents of my colleagues are widely, they vary on different levels. So from skill set, from backgrounds, so on all different levels, right? So in all companies I work for, either as a consultant or as a DPO, I structure them usually in the same way. First of all, you have the legal stream, so they take care of all the legal issues. They, they pay attention to every single word. They do the contract negotiations, data policy agreements. They answer the very complex legal questions. So typical legal work, right? You cannot drive a privacy organization just with legal work, and I'm going to explain that to you why. So the second stream, so we have the first stream, and the first stream is the legal team. The second stream is the privacy tech team. So this is the team who actually speaks kind of the language of the tech organizations, who understand the legal requirements, and who have the skill set to translate legal words to technical terms, so to technical specifications. So their job is actually to train the teams and to explain an engineer, a security engineer, what to do when we are talking about certain requirements, for instance, privacy by design or privacy by default. So what does it actually mean? And lastly, we do have the privacy governance team that is constantly and continuously reviewing and revising the strategy of the data privacy team. They're building the organization. So not only the data protection organization, the core team, but also the privacy organization, with some call them champions, some call them coordinators, some call them heroes. And the job of the privacy governance team also to kind of ensure that we have best quality in place. So they are auditing both my team as a privacy team, but also the teams outside of my team, so the business teams, right? So on all different teams, you need to have different skill sets. So for instance, the legal team, you need to have classical lawyers who are really able to review contracts, who really pay attention on single words. In the privacy tech team, I need people who can read IT infrastructure, the architecture of a project, and are strong in process automation and very good project managers, because they have to drive projects and they have to influence the engineering teams to start new initiatives in this area. And our job ends not at that point. We take it even further and we explain, or we manage the project as a project manager. So, which is good for us, because on the one hand, we do provide the service to the business teams as a project management team. At the same time, we are controlling and we are ensuring that privacy is taken into account and that we have the needed documentation in place. And lastly, the governance function. I do want to have a team with very strong communication skills, who can organize themselves and can get people excited about privacy, right? So the governance team, you have to understand that as your sales team, they need to talk to so many different people. They need to sell privacy to the different business units and get management buy-in, et cetera, et cetera. So very important. And on all different teams, you need different skill sets. In an age where data is the new gold, tech and developers play an immensely important role. If they make any mistake, we have a big problem, as major damage can occur very quickly, right? So if you have a data breach, not only, I mean, millions of data sets are leaked, and the reputational damage, the financial damage, so it's very hard to get that back, right? At the same time, there are completely different category of stakeholders, and even some people could even say human beings. They speak a different language. They have different values. They communicate differently. So I'm a lawyer. I'm used to speak to lawyers, right? When I start talking to techies in general, at the beginning, I was, there was a very clear miscommunication. I was saying something legal, they were understanding and translated to, in their own legal technical language, is something completely different, right? So therefore, the approach to communication, specifications, as well as project management has to be adapted when you work with the tech and development teams. So if you get this task right, then as DPO, you have the key to the brain of the company, and you can gain a lot of influence on the development of products. Personally, I love working with the tech teams because they are very creative and lazy at the same time. They take the path of least resistance, and my job is to put the right signatures on the map so that they can take the right shortcut. Our goal is not to prevent these shortcuts, but to show them the right direction. So it's okay to not do that, but here's the right cut to the right outcome. So the biggest mistake in general, in my view, is when data protection is seen as a DPO's job, right? Sometimes, and also as a consultant, I've seen that. So some organizations have the understanding of, well, we don't have to take care of our privacy, we have a DPO. Well, no. So it's important. So if you want to inject data protection in the DNA, so DNS of an organization, it requires participation of every single employee within the organization. So what does it mean for me as a DPO for my team? We have to inspire our colleagues and our team in general right from the onboarding stage. So when we approach them with a very boring, a very legal specific or very overloaded presentation, and we will lose them within 2 minutes, right? So that's not the goal. What we instead do is have a very creative presentation, like with different memes, with different GIFs, with different quizzes, so very interactive. So the overall goal is that they fall in love with privacy. That makes my life easier in the future, because I don't have to sell privacy to them, because they already have been injected with privacy right from the beginning. Another pitfall in my eyes are if I see that teams are building silos, so where knowledge is preserved and not exchanged. So this can happen within the DPO team, but also outside of the DPO team, right? So just to give you an example, let's say the legal team is reviewing the data processing agreements, right? But the legal team is not checking if the data processing agreements and the process in it, the process which wants to be outsourced to an external party, if they don't check if this is in the records of processing activity listed, it would mean at the same time that they cannot really get an understanding of the risk nature of the process, with whom was this personal data being shared. So what is the general risk we are talking about? Is that an acceptable risk level or not? At the same time, we cannot start with the DPIA if one is required, right? Imagine we are collecting sensitive data, we're sharing this sensitive data of minors with a third company in a third country outside of the EU. Bam, you have a typical case for DPIA. So if the legal team is building silos and not communicating and efficiently and sufficiently with the other teams with the other streams within the DPO team, we already have a miscommunication, which will lead to more work, to frustration, to to all kinds of negative impacts it might have of creating silos. So I see myself as more as a conductor, coordinating the teams, making sure that those silos are not formed. The same goes for engineers and IT security teams, of course. Let's say there is a new IT threat and we are not aware of that. Let's see, an encryption method can now be decrypted, which means most of the processes which we have documented and assessed in the past need to be reopened again, because the main threat has entered the field, and we have to reassess the potential risk scenarios. If the security team or anyone who has the knowledge doesn't share that information with us, it would mean it's an actual impact on my daily business, because I'm putting my organization into a very high risk, not only on the organization itself, but the individuals whose personal data we are processing on a daily basis. So very important to communicate and to ensure that knowledge is exchanged between the teams and between the units as well. We are in incredibly interesting time, to be honest. So with new technologies like ChatGPT, OpenAI, new trends, there are so many opportunities for us, but also at the same time, new risks, right? I think 2023 will be a time of new technologies and risks that we haven't seen before. With AI, for instance, you can not only write a code, but you can also find and exploit loopholes in codes, which means data protection, information security will take on an even more important role, and we have to continue to develop and challenge ourselves in order to not stand still, improve in our skill sets, right? As I just gave an example, right? So you can use OpenAI for code checks, and you can ask the OpenAI to write the code, but at the same time, you can also say, please show me the loopholes from a security perspective using that source code, right? So we have to, as lawyers, as a data privacy team, we have to think outside of the box. So cool, we have new trends. How can we utilize them? How can we optimize using them in our daily work? For instance, we are not writing privacy awareness communications anymore. We are using OpenAI because why not? So we can spend our time, which we save with this tool, in our other projects. At the same time, we have to understand what is the inherent risk of using these new technologies, not only internally, but also externally. Well, it's a very good opportunity to increase awareness within the organization, but also to reflect, where do we stand? What do we still want to achieve? Are we reaching our employees as our key stakeholders? Or do we have to adapt our strategy? It's like a birthday. You celebrate not only the day itself, but all the accomplishments of the last year, and also the failures. And at the same time, you are realizing, well, I become 1 year older, which means new challenges will come next year. So how can I prepare myself? I'm 35 and I'm already start feeling back pains, and which means, cool, I achieved so much in the past, but now I have to do some exercises in order to prevent back pains, etc. So yeah, I'm seeing it more from this perspective.